Hey guys, I'm here today with Liam's labor and delivery story. So I just want to preface this by saying that everyone's labor is different, and me personally, I actually tend to have really easy labors. So if you're watching this trying to figure out what to expect, don't freak yourself out like I did, and expect one thing, because you're probably going to get something totally different. I scared the crap out of myself every time I watched a labor and delivery vlog, thinking I was going to have like the worst labor ever. Just watch for like information of like usually what happens in the hospital than to really try to gauge what's going to happen to you, because literally it could be the polar opposite. So I don't remember things like timeline wise, because it was actually a lot longer than my first labor and I wasn't really paying that much attention. I was just kind of hanging out. Whereas with your first labor, you kind of track every single second of everything, and you're like watching the clock, trying to like prepare yourself for how long you think it's going to be. Like, it's just a whole different experience. Your second baby is just really different. So bear with me if things aren't like perfect time wise. Yes, slap me on the wrist. I'm a horrible mom. I don't remember the exact minute my son was born, but I remember the general time. So to get right into it, I had to be induced. I actually have a blood clotting disorder that made me have to be on blood thinners the whole entire pregnancy. So they kind of want to, I guess, make sure they have total control over your labor and delivery. Because I was on blood thinners, it could potentially be dangerous if I needed to have a C-section, etc. So that is why I had to be induced. I was induced with my first, and so that's pretty much all I know. So I went in on June the 8th. That was my induction date. He was not born until June the 9th. And I know that sounds scary to a lot of people, but please don't let that freak you out. So I went in June 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't taken back to a room until I want to say like it was almost probably 9. It took a really long time. No, it was like 8:30ish, I think. It took a long time for them to actually put me back into a room. So my room was pretty good. The bed was really small, which I thought was weird. With my first, the bed was like gigantic. So I kind of felt very claustrophobic in it, and it freaked me out. So it took a while for them to come in and get all of my information. They had to draw blood, and I had to wait a while to see if my platelet count was at a place where it was okay for me to get an epidural, because they had me stop taking my shots. I want to say, I think it was 24 or 48 hours before I went in to go be induced with him. So they wanted to make sure my blood got pretty much back to normal to where I could get an epidural. So after they took my blood, they asked me a bunch of questions about how I kind of wanted my labor and delivery to go, which I thought was really awesome, because the first place I went did not do that, and I felt really uncomfortable and scared. I was able to tell them basically like what I wanted to happen when he was born, like that I wanted to nurse right away, I wanted skin to skin immediately. If they wanted to check him, they could check him on my chest. I didn't want him taken away from me. So I basically was able to dictate everything that happened during my labor and delivery. They also were really awesome and gave me a couple of tips that actually pretty much saved me, kind of, for the most part, because there's something interesting that happens later on. So they told me basically to try to get as far along as I could without an epidural, because like everyone knows, epidurals can slow things down. So they told me to get as far along as I possibly could. So they said right before they were going to break my water, that I needed to tell them to go ahead and give me the epidural, because I witnessed this last time, and let me just tell you, it is miserable. Once your water is broken, contractions suck. Like, they hurt. So they said, right before you get that done, get your epidural so it can kick in, and then you won't have to deal with the worst part of it. So I was like, okay, you know what? I probably should have thought about that with Raylan. So I probably didn't get started on Pitocin until I want to say around 11 o'clock. At this point, it was just me and Pell in the hospital room. They started my Pitocin, and it was all like a very casual event. I don't know, I guess they do this every day, so it's not a big deal. But I remember with my first, everyone, nurses included, were acting like the world was gonna end. Like, I can't even describe it. They acted like starting the Pitocin, like everything, it was like, are you ready? Are you sure you're ready? Are you sure you're ready? And it scared the crap out of me. But this time, they were like, all right, your Pitocin's in, we'll see you in a couple of hours. And I was like, okay, cool, see you later. I'll just labor in here while I'm hanging out. And they checked me right before they started my Pitocin. I was at 2 centimeters dilated, and I think they said around 50% effaced. 50 to 75% effaced, I'm pretty sure. This kind of surprised me because my doctor told me a week before that I was 3 centimeters dilated. I don't think you can, like, close back up, but I'm not sure, so do not quote me on that. So after that happened, I was expecting to move really, really quickly. Once again, if you want a labor and delivery story on Raylan, I will do it, because hers, like, I mean, like, it was like bam, bam, born. Like, literally, it was the fastest thing in the world. So I was expecting things to move quickly, and I also told the doctors this. They asked me how my previous induction went, because inductions have this stigma around them that they take a lot longer. My body just loves to have babies, and I am literally not kidding when I say that. Like, my labors, I mean, like, are so easy, like, they're fast, I can tolerate the pain really well, like, it just... So they were like, you know what, we're going to keep this in mind, because you're probably going to have this baby even faster this time, which, by the way, didn't happen. Are you talking to me? Yes, you're talking to me. You're so cute. I can't handle it. I'm talking about you, too. I'm talking about you. Yeah. So the contractions started up as soon as the Pitocin did. It didn't take long for my body to snap into gear, which is the exact same way that it did with Raylan. So I immediately started having contractions about 2 to 3 minutes apart, lasting from 30 to 40 seconds long. You're so handsome, yes. That went on for a pretty long time, I want to say, and my Pitocin was only set at like a 2 or a 3, I think, so it was relatively low. So after a while of me just laboring, my contractions never really started to get worse, and I kind of was getting antsy because, you know, I dilated so fast with Raylan that I wanted them to check really badly how dilated I was. So a midwife came in and checked me, and I was almost 5 centimeters dilated. So as soon as I heard that, I knew they were probably going to break my water, and I probably wanted to go ahead and get my epidural. And this was, I want to say, around like, it was probably around 2 or 3 o'clock. So I went ahead and asked for my epidural because they told me they were going to break my water. It probably took another 3 hours, so until like, I want to say maybe like 5 or 6 until I had my water broken and got my epidural. And still, they turned the Pitocin up to a 6, and I was still handling the contractions very, very well. They were painful, but I was trying to stand up to get him to drop down and kind of get my body to like, gravity to work him down to make things speed up. So I was just standing up, rocking back and forth. Like, the contractions were not that bad, and he seemed to be tolerating them really well. Raylan didn't tolerate them as well. So, you know, things were just moving along really, really easily. So I went to a teaching hospital, like a school, and I didn't know ahead of time that it was actually a student that would be giving me my epidural. Had I known that, I probably would have asked for someone different, especially because getting an epidural with my blood disorder is so dangerous. So, like I said, between 5 or 6, the anesthesiologist came in to give me my epidural. That, honest to God, was the absolute worst part of this labor and delivery. So they had to try to replace it about 5 or 6 times, and, you know, with Raylan, I didn't feel it at all when they gave me the epidural. I could feel it the whole entire time. Like, my legs kept jerking. I felt these, like, shocking tingles all the way down my spine, down my leg. It wasn't a fun experience, and I know to a lot of people it's like, whatever, you know, everyone says, like, your contractions are so bad that you don't feel it. Well, my contractions, like, are nothing for some reason. Like, my contractions just don't seem to hurt me for some reason, so it wasn't like that at all for me. I would take the contractions any day over this epidural. And, you know, when I was younger, I always said I didn't want to have babies because of how scared I was of the epidural. So that was not a fun experience. They eventually had to get an actual doctor in to place my epidural correctly. And then even once they did, it wasn't placed right because my epidural just didn't work. And what I learned from Raylan is that, like, I needed to flip sides to, like, get it to equally be on both sides. I had to lay back so it went down correctly. Like, you know, it's just, I was trying absolutely everything. I was super, super numb in my legs, and my legs only. I could still feel the contractions. I could feel everything in the nether regions. Just my legs were so incredibly numb. It was just pooling down there. And after a couple of calls to the anesthesiologist, we finally just determined that my body just wasn't accepting the epidural correctly. So, Even though I technically did have a medicated labor and delivery, I technically didn't because I figured out also with the anesthesiologist checking how high up the epidural went, that it was literally only going to about my thigh. So I actually was feeling all of the pain anyways from labor and delivery. I kept pumping the button though, praying to God that something would happen, but no, in the end, I actually just ended up with numb legs for almost 48 hours. So then they came in to break my water. That was easy as well, and the contractions slowly started getting stronger. It wasn't like with Raylan where the next contraction after my water broke was like the most intense thing I felt in my life. They just definitely started getting stronger, but they progressed slower. So I was still at about a minute and a half to 2 minutes between contractions, and they were lasting now for about almost a minute in total. At this point, they had waited so long to break my water that when they checked me again, I was still only at a 5, and I kind of got upset about that because I know he probably would have been born by like 6 o'clock had they actually broken my water at around like 2, like they said they were going to, but they waited like hours. I went 4 hours in labor without any change because they didn't break my water. Which kind of sucked just because I got really tired by the end of this, but I know I can't complain because my contractions don't hurt like other people's do, and people are sometimes in labor for days, so, at the same time, I got lucky, so who am I to complain? So after all that happened, once again, I just kind of hung out. Pal's parents came to visit me. It was kind of funny because they seemed kind of freaked out. I kind of think it's been so long since they've actually been with someone who's in labor that they didn't know really what to expect, so they looked terrified. And to me it's just kind of funny because my body handles it so easily that when people come in so freaked out, they almost get shocked that I'm just sitting there watching TV and on my phone and talking to people. But it's just I don't know, it's just kind of entertaining. So they came and said hey for a little bit, and labor just kept on trucking on. After all that, we kind of started setting bets on what time we thought Liam was going to be born. I swore he was going to be born by 10, but it just kept reaching closer and closer and closer to 10, and they hadn't checked me since my water was broken at around 6, so we had no idea where I was at. But I will tell you, when you are in labor, you know when you are fully dilated, so just don't be scared about that because, trust me, you just have this instinct, you just know. So we just kept watching HGTV and Food Network, and we were just talking and hanging out, and finally the contractions got uncomfortable. And when I say that, the contractions themselves weren't really hurting. I could tell that he was deep down in my pelvis, if you know what I'm saying. I could tell that I was almost 10 centimeters dilated. I could tell that he probably was going to be there in the next, I want to say, hour and a half to 2 hours, because I could feel him basically stuck between my legs and my vagina. I could feel him there. And it wasn't necessarily the contractions that hurt, it was feeling him push down every single time I had them. So I called the nurse in and I kind of told her what I was feeling, and I told her I didn't want to be checked again, but I just wanted to basically sit up so that he could drop down more, because I couldn't stand up anymore because I had the epidural, so they had to sit me up. So they pulled the bed literally all the way sitting forward, and they bent the bottom part down, so I basically had my knees dangling and I was in a sitting position. At this point, my mom was about to fall asleep on the couch. Powell was sitting beside me because I was having to, it had been about an hour and a half to 2 hours that I was actually having to concentrate and breathe through my contractions. And it was just, he was, I think, getting tired because every contraction I was just squeezing his hand and closing my eyes, and I was counting to 10 and calming myself down, and I think him seeing me in that sort of situation kind of made him uncomfortable and wore him out. So my mom was about to be asleep and he was about to be asleep, and I was so incredibly tired that I was literally about to fall asleep while having these contractions. So for the next hour or so, I was in tremendous pain. Once again, I could handle it. I was breathing through it. If there's something that I could suggest to anyone, it's close your eyes and breathe through your contractions in silence and count. Do anything like that you need to get yourself through the contraction. One thing that I kept telling myself over and over again was, every time I'd have a contraction, I'd take one deep breath and I'd be like, this is my body pushing him further down. I'm so much closer to actually meeting my baby. And I would just envision him just like pushing further down and pushing further down. And it helped me get through every single contraction. So at this point, I literally was so tired I couldn't open my eyes anymore. I don't think I was tired from the pain. I was just tired from my body working so much, like in ways that I didn't even know. And I think that's why I was so exhausted. Plus, it was getting on super late. At this point, it was around like 12, a little after midnight, so now it was actually the next day. The nurse kept on coming in and saying, do you want me to check you now? And I kept saying no, like I want to work him down as far as I can because I know I'm going to appreciate it once I'm actually pushing. So, at this point, literally everyone's asleep except for me. I'm sitting there trying not to fall asleep still, and I told myself, like, just keep pushing, just get yourself just a little bit longer, just keep going through these contractions, like, go until you literally cannot take it anymore. Finally got to the point at around almost 1 in the morning that I could not take it anymore. I honestly thought I was only going to be sitting up in that chair for about 15 minutes, but I pushed myself to just take these contractions basically without an epidural or any medication for about an hour because I wanted him and my body to do as much as it could before I actually had to like start putting real energy into it to push. So I finally could not bear it anymore. I woke Powell up, I woke my mom up, and I was like, it's like he's coming. Like, it was to the point where I was almost screaming through the contractions just because of how much pressure I felt of him pushing down. So I called the nurse and then I told her, I was like, I'm 10 centimeters, I can already tell you that now, and you should probably get the doctor immediately. So within a couple of minutes, I was laid back down, I was scooted to the edge of the bed, and the doctors were all in there. Now, once again, this is a teaching hospital, so there was like everyone and their mother in this place watching me give birth to Liam. So I was checked, I was in fact 10 centimeters, and they were actually shocked because his head was literally right there because I just let him drop as long as I possibly could. So they had a couple other doctors come in. I had, at this point, probably like 7, 8, 9, 10, I think about 10 people in the room with me, getting things ready for him to come, getting all the stuff ready to deliver him, and I was like ready to go. So at this point, I was so exhausted that I like couldn't even feel my contractions anymore, and I think that may just be what happens. Like, once you're ready to push, you don't necessarily feel the pain from the contractions anymore. Like, you almost can't feel them. I swear your body just like knows how much pain you're in and it just kind of makes itself numb. So I was finally able to push. I got him out and I want to say 3 pushes, or through 3 contractions. I did about 1 to 2 pushes each contraction. On the second contraction, I actually pushed 1 more time. I think I pushed 3 times because I told them, I can feel him right there, and I know if I do this push right now, his head will be out. And so I kept envisioning my goal. I was like, I know I've done 2 pushes. I'm exhausted. I know I can fit 1 more push in, and I know if I do, his head will be out. So I did it, and there went his head. So then after that, it only took 1 more contraction, and I actually think the last contraction was only 1 push. So that's about 5 or 6 pushes in total, and I was only pushing for maybe like 5 minutes. So he was born. They immediately put him on my chest. It was absolutely amazing. It was the best experience ever. It was just like Raylan, but this time I was like prepared for him. I was so horrified with Raylan that like I was scared to like enjoy the moment. So he was born sometime after 1 in the morning. I feel horrible because I don't know. I want to say it was like 104, or it was just 1 something. It's pretty much all that I know. So he was born and he weighed 7 pounds, 1 ounce, and he was 20 inches long exactly. I was able to nurse him literally right away. The doctors were awesome, and as soon as he was born, they stitched me up because I did tear just a tiny bit. Couldn't feel it. It healed up super easy. It wasn't anything awful. It just took a while because a student did it once again. I'm telling you, like, it was just something else delivering a baby where students do half of the work. I know they need to learn somehow, but it was just kind of scary, and things took a lot longer than they probably would have otherwise. But the doctors all left the room. They let me nurse in peace. They let me and Powell have time. My mom ended up going ahead and leaving because she was so tired. They just let us spend time with our baby, which was really, really nice because, once again, like, I just, I was so thrown off and nervous and scared when I had Raylan that like that whole first hour I was so busy being worried that I didn't get to enjoy it. And with him, I just got to look at him and nurse him, and me and Pal got to love on him, and it was just the best thing ever. So after that, the nurses came in and finished checking him up, and they rolled us right on up to our room. We only had to stay for about a day. His bilirubin levels were a little bit elevated, but it wasn't anything bad. And I was doing really, really well afterwards, so they went ahead and let us go home after a day of being in the hospital. But the only problems that I would say I had with my labor and delivery, and if I ever had another baby again, I would do things differently. I would not get an epidural. So that epidural totally screwed me up. Like, my legs, I actually had to be visited by the anesthesiologist a couple of times during my stay, that one day stay in the hospital, because my legs wouldn't stop being numb. With Raylan, they felt normal by the time that I had her. I was able to get up and walk to my bed after I had her. I wasn't able to get out of bed without help until like the middle of the day the next day, so probably like 12 plus hours after I even had him, probably like almost towards like 18 to 20 hours, I literally was not able to walk. My legs, I couldn't feel them, and for a couple of days they just didn't feel right. I don't know, I just don't think it's worth it. And now, having gone through basically the full pain of having labor and delivering a baby without an epidural, knowing that my body can handle it and I can mentally handle it, I probably would just not get an epidural the next time I had a baby. It just really, really honestly screwed me up. It just kind of sucked because I wasn't able to change his diapers, I wasn't able to go shower properly, I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. It was just annoying, and it was a big hassle. I couldn't brush my teeth, I couldn't change clothes, like I was just stuck to the bed for like another whole half of a day because the epidural would not wear off. And for having gone through so much struggle and pain to even get it in, it's just kind of irritating when something like that happens. It was a great labor and delivery. Honestly, I couldn't complain about it. I thought it was great. The fact that I can just hang out and just be fine, when I'm having a baby is like awesome. Like, I can literally talk after I push, after having a contraction. Like, it's just, I'm very, very lucky to have really, really easy labor and deliveries. And the doctors kept telling me, like, we swear sometimes people are just meant to have babies, and you're just one of those people. They're like, this stuff like amazes us. This doesn't happen often. They're like, usually people are screaming through this. Like, usually people are in so much pain they can't even talk. They're like, some people are literally just meant to have babies, and you are one of them. Like, I didn't even break a sweat during this whole entire labor and delivery, and that was even without a properly working epidural. So I'm just really, really blessed. We had a beautiful, healthy baby boy, so it was just the best experience we could have ever asked for. And if we ever do decide to have another baby, I will not be getting an epidural. I will tell you that for sure, because that ended up being more of a hassle than actually the labor and delivery itself. So anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Please comment down below if you want to hear Raylan's labor and delivery, because this one's kind of like a boring, really easy one. That one's definitely a lot more interesting. Some interesting things happened, and it's kind of funny too, so I really think, it will be a fun story to tell. So let me know down below if you would like to see that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have changed my mind. I will only be posting videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Also, don't forget to go check out my vlog channel. That will be linked down below. We vlog every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so basically you can see me every single day except for Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, talk to you guys later. Bye!